another day, and unbelievably, another beheading. The Islamic State, that is now in control of about a third of Syria and a third of Iraq, and has wiped out the border in between, has beheaded another American journalist, Steven Sotloff. This time they did it very similar to the last time, as with James Foley. They did a video, they put him in orange garb, and that is, by the way, to represent Guantanamo. They say that, you know, we are holding prisoners in Gitmo like this, and that they are holding prisoners equally. Now, we did some terrible things in Gitmo, and we criticized our government for doing so. We didn't do anything like this. We did not cut their heads off with a knife. And it was gruesome, and it is disgusting morally in every way possible. And these guys obviously are not to be negotiated with, and no matter what you do, whether you attack them, whether you try to talk to them, it doesn't seem to matter. You get the beheadings either way. Now, of course, I'll show you in a little bit, Fox News is already on the attack, blaming President Obama for it, saying he should have been tougher, but ISIS, by their own words, say that they attacked and did these beheadings because we bombed them. So if we had bombed them further, that doesn't really help the situation. In fact, they say if we do any more bombings, they're going to behead a third Westerner that they hold, and that is British journalist David Cawthorne Haynes. Some have described him as a journalist, some have described him as an aid worker. You're looking at Steven Sotloff there. Just that picture alone, let alone knowing what happened afterwards, is just so terrifying. And that's part of the point here. That's what they want to do. Now they say, remember at the end of the last video when they beheaded Foley, they said, the life of this American citizen, they had shown Sotloff, Obama, depends on your next decision. And they said, if you bomb us again, we will behead the guy. We did bomb them again, and they did behead Sotloff. Okay, now, I'm showing you what didn't work, but let me show you another strategy that unfortunately did not reach its goal either, and that it was Shirley Sotloff's strategy. That was the mother of Steven. Now, don't get me wrong, I would do anything for my kids, and my heart hurts every time I think about her situation. She tried this, and I think any parent might try anything to get their kid out of that situation. She sent this message pleading to the Islamic State. I am sending this message to you, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi al-Quraishi al-Husseini, the Caliph of the Islamic State. I am Shirley Sotloff. My son Steven is in your hands. You, the Caliph, can grant amnesty. I ask you please to release my child. I ask you to use your authority to spare his life. And of course, that did not work either. So carrots don't work, sticks don't work, nothing works. And their demand, by the way, was over $100 million and the end to us ever bombing them again. So obviously we weren't going to do that either. By the way, the Americans and the British do not negotiate with terrorists. Now, we used to back in the day, of course, during the Ronald Reagan's years, we negotiated with terrorists all the time, and we traded arms for hostages, and that set a bad precedent. It led to more people being kidnapped. Now, we have stopped doing that, and unfortunately, we haven't had kidnappings like this in a long time, meaning, unfortunately, they have sprung up again. It was good that they had not happened, but when someone is captured, often the Europeans pay a ransom, and in fact, it has unfortunately increased the finances of the terrorists in different factions, different groups at different times. We don't participate in that. But the downside of that principle is our hostages very often, almost always, get executed or held indefinitely. So that has happened to these two, by the way, great Americans. I mean, you want to talk about courage to go into the middle of Syria to do reporting so the world can know what's happening. He was in there to find out what had happened to the Syrian people, whether they were being killed by Bashar al-Assad or groups like the Islamic State, and what had happened to the kids. Were they going to school in the meanwhile? I mean, amazing, amazing reporting by these two reporters who are no longer with us. So now, of course, here comes the criticism. Katie McFarland, who, funny enough, worked for the Reagan administration, who used to negotiate with terrorists, is going to come on Fox News and criticize President Obama anyway.
A sad day for America, right?
You bet. And I'm not sure it's a day that had to happen. You know, the president has stuck his head in the sand. We now have evidence that he's known about the threat that was mounting, coming, the ability of ISIS to take large areas, be well funded, be well armed. And the president stuck his head in the sand. And now we've seen 2 Americans have lost their heads.
Yeah, that's a really clever pun. Ha ha, that's really funny. 2 reporters just got beheaded, and now you're talking about head versus head, and it's all President Obama's fault. But wait a minute. ISIS said that they beheaded the guys because Obama kept bombing them. Well, you said he stuck his head in the sand, that he's not doing anything about it. But he is doing something about it. Now, if you criticize him for doing the bombing and that got these guys killed, I'd say you're wrong again, because you can't negotiate with Islamic State. They're going to do the beheadings either way. But at least you would have a logical nexus, whereas your irrational point is, I don't like President Obama, and he didn't negotiate with these guys. In fact, he bombed them, but I'm still going to say he did nothing, and it was all his fault. Why? Because I'm on Fox News. Again, she was Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs under President Ronald Reagan, who consistently negotiated with terrorists. At least if you had any kind of decency, you would come out and say, oh, my boss, he would have gotten them out by bribing the terrorists. He would have given them money, as he did, Reagan did, and he would have given them weapons so they could attack us more and they could get more hostages. That's what Reagan would have done. That's what I would have helped Reagan to do. But instead, she comes out here and makes puns and points about what President Obama should do. Now, she's not only going to do that. I mean, you know how the Republicans always say, if there's a shooting, don't politicize it, don't politicize it, right? Don't ever talk about gun control. And the list goes on and on things you're not supposed to politicize. Now, here she comes connecting it to our issues at the border, which have absolutely nothing to do with this.
It's not just who's going to be dying in the Middle East when this group expands to the region. Who's protecting the homeland? The president has said nothing in all these conversations about we're going to secure the border. We're going to get rid of political correctness and figure out who's here. We're going to find out what American passport holders are going into the Middle East, are fighting in Syria and Iraq, getting trained, and then coming back to America. We have heard nothing about
Because
that.
Last week we heard that there was no strategy.
Admittedly by the president.
Admittedly. What does this do, this beheading, reportedly, to raise the stakes and the pressure on President Obama and this administration to react, to say something?
They've already said something. They've said something over and over. Not only have they said something, they've already bombed the Islamic State over and over and over again. So they say there's no strategy here. The president admitted himself. He was specifically referring to, do I have a military strategy for what to do in Syria when the Islamic State, who we hate and despise, is fighting Bashar al-Assad, who we hate and despise? Well, if you've got a military strategy on that Fox News, let us know, because that's a tough question. I know what their answer would be. Just obliterate Syria, bomb both sides. And then how would we be liberating them, right? So, of course, they're going to use this for every political angle and then secure the border. Now, what does the border have to do with this poor guy getting beheaded in the middle of Iraq and Syria? The border with Mexico, by the way. We're not talking about the border between Iraq and Syria. The border with Mexico and the U.S. They say, oh, no, Islamic State's constantly coming over. What evidence? None. None. One piece of evidence that a blogger had was a prayer rug that was left over, which turned out to be an Adidas soccer jersey. Don't politicize. Sure, this hours after we find out about the beheading, this is what's happening on Fox News. One more.
Apparently in his presidential daily briefings, the PDBs, as it's known in the inside circles, that apparently ISIS has been talked about in those briefings for the last year, and the president, we know, reads these briefings. So it just became to head for all of us to know about ISIS in the last few months, but ostensibly the president has known about it. So what are they going to do about that report now?
To me, it's a dereliction of duty. I mean, I worked for Henry Kissinger when he prepared the president's daily brief and gave it to President Nixon. The president's daily brief is the most highly classified document in the United States government. What was this president doing? Well, he was playing a lot of golf this summer, but he clearly was not attending to the defense of the United States.
No, another cute thing. Oh, yeah, he plays golf. Ha ha. Yeah, we got him. He plays golf. Okay. How about the presidential daily briefing they gave to George W. Bush when he was on vacation, not for a week, for a month, for the entire month of August? And what year would that have been? Oh, 2001. What's the month after August in 2000? Oh, right, September 11th of 2001 We got hit by Al-Qaeda. A presidential daily briefing in August of that year had said bin Laden determined to attack inside the United States. Literally, after that briefing was given to him, Bush told the CIA agent who gave him the briefing, "You covered your ass, now go home." Didn't give a damn. Went back on vacation for a month. And now Fox News comes out and says, well, he knew about ISIS. Of course! We knew about it. We talked about it on air. The question is, what do? You want to send ground troops to help Bashar al-Assad, the dictator in Syria, fight against these guys? Do you want to give money to other Sunni militants to fight against these guys? You want to give more money to the Iraqi army that runs like cowards from these guys? You want to send our guys to die in that area between Iraq and Syria? What do you want to do? All you want to do is play politics and criticize the president. I got no love for 100 different things the president does, but God damn it, you got to be fair. And this is not about what the president did. This is about the Islamic State. Yes, how horrific they are, and the bravery and the courage of these journalists. They're covering this no matter what, so we find out the reality and not the propaganda that we get fed by groups like Fox News.